Hey kids, you're listening to a couple of Annoyed Grunt Boys
and Girl,
and this is Eye Off Springfield. On January 26, 1976, a perp named Frederick Clooney was escorted into the holding cell of New York City's 12th precinct located in Greenwich Village. The detective who escorted said perp, a one detective Stanley Wojo to his colleagues, informs the head of his precinct, Captain Barney Miller, that he needs to escort Mr. Clooney back to Cleveland, Ohio. The reason for the police escort? Mr. Clooney has committed the heinous crime of bigamy, one wife in New York and one in Cleveland. Unfortunately for Detective Wojo, he has aerophobia, the fear of flying. Later that same day, a good Samaritan hands in a folder he found on the street containing $3,500, with the precinct on the edge of their seats, wondering if anyone will claim that cold, hard cash. This, of course, was an episode of the television series Barney Miller. The episode titled Fear of Flying was the 17th episode of the second season. This was the first episode written by series writer and producer Reinhold Wiggy. While Barney Miller lasted for a total of 8 seasons, including a spin-off show called Fish, which lasted for 2, with the end of Barney Miller, Reinhold would continue telling tales of law enforcement, but this time instead of the police, it would be lawyers. This new show would star actor Harold Gould, maybe best known for playing Kid Twist in the Academy Award-winning film The Sting, as David Ross, head of the New York City Free Legal Aid Clinic with the staff of very young attorneys. The show was known as Park Place. Unfortunately, it only lasted for 4 episodes. Determined to continue telling stories of law in a funny way, Reinhold's next attempt would prove successful. Set during the night shift of Manhattan Criminal Court, audiences would see a young-faced, Mel Torme-loving amateur magician judge who would rule over cases of the criminally absurd with humor and heart. Night Court, which starred Harry Anderson as Judge Harold T. Stone, would last from 1984 to 1992, earning a total of 31 Emmy nominations, with 7 wins in total, 4 consecutive ones being from co-star John Larroquette, who would play the sleazy yet lovable district attorney Dan Fielding. A 5th consecutive Emmy win may have been in the cards for Mr. Larroquette in 1989, but out of humility, he requested his name be out of the running for that year's Emmys. For the first few seasons while the show is finding its footing, the cast would be changed due to personal reasons and deaths, but only Harry Anderson, John Larroquette, and Richard Mall as the bailiff, Nostradamus Bull Shannon, would be with the show from the beginning to the end. It wasn't until Markie Post, playing public defender Christine Sullivan, Charles Robinson as court clerk Mac Robinson, and Marcia Warfield as bailiff Rosalind Roz Russell would make up the rest of the ensemble until the show's end in '92. With the sudden rise of TV shows from the 80s and 90s coming back with reboots or continuations such as Mad About You, Will and Grace, Bel Air, Saved by the Bell, Law and Order, the soon-to-be Frasier, and Quantum Leap, all which aired on NBC like Night Court, it was only a matter of time to tap into the booming nostalgia and brand recognition. On December 16, 2020, it was announced that NBC would bring back the beloved courtroom sitcom. Leading the revival is actress and producer Melissa Rauch, best known for her role as the smart, short-tempered, ruthless, squeaky-voiced woman Bernadette on the hit sitcom The Big Bang Theory. Although she was not originally expected to act on the show, merely a producer, she would eventually play the leading role of Judge Abby Stone, the daughter of the original series character Harry Stone. The only cast member from the original series to return is John Larroquette, portraying yet again Dan Fielding. Sadly, original cast members Charles Robinson, Markie Post, and Harry Anderson have since left this mortal coil. Fans will still hold out hope that they may see Marcia Warfield's Roz or Richard Moll's Bull make a return for an episode or 2. They will just have to wait and see. In the meantime, they can meet the new cast of characters with India D. Beaufort as Olivia, the assistant district attorney, Kapil Talwalkar as Neil, the courtroom clerk, and Lakrita as Donna Gerganis, the bailiff, for the all-new Night Court. This week on Eye Off Springfield, we sentence you $50 fine with time served. Court is back in session with Night Court 2023 edition. Welcome back to Eye Off Springfield. I'm one of the hosts, Craig.
I'm another host, Steve.
And I'm some random girl off the street, Heather.
Heather,
Hey, random girl.
No, they remember you from the last week's episode, or last episode, not
Years?
week. December. We talked about the first 2 episodes of Willow, right? Was that December or November?
I think it was November, maybe.
All right, I believe you. Yeah, that sounds about right. That tracks. Hey, if you guys listened to that Willow, we did the first 2 episodes. The series is wrapped by now. Should we just, I know it's not a Willow podcast. We're talking about, obviously, Night Court. But, Steve, what were your thoughts on the first season of Willow?
Well, Craig, I'm going to be honest with you. I made it through 5 episodes, and then it just kind of faded off my radar. I want to revisit it eventually, but it just tonally was a little off for me. Like, I think the hyper intelligent gnomes and the stupid riddles kind of got to me, and I just could not finish it. So sadly, even though I think I may have been the biggest Willow fan going into it, I could not finish it.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, that was the same moment. The Trolls was kind of where they lost my interest as well. I did still appreciate some parts of the show, but if you asked me what parts stood out to me, I couldn't really tell you which parts those were. So I guess that's saying something about it.
Sure.
I think it's funny that we had that episode. We're like, oh, all high hopes for the Willow series. We were all eager. Kind of ended on a whimper for the Willow fans here of Heather. And
yeah, it's one of those things where if I'm writing a list of pros and cons, the cons started outweighing the goods, unfortunately.
Yeah, Christian Slater was a pro.
Oh, yeah.
He's always been a pro, Steve.
Yeah.
I wasn't a big Willow guy. So, I mean, I was fine with it, but I think it's, I don't think we were the demographic for this show.
I honestly think that was the biggest problem with the show in general, is that it didn't know who its demographic was.
I totally agree with that.
But you guys finished it, correct?
Yes, we did. We did finish it.
I realized that was the last episode.
Always a good sign in a season finale.
Well, they teased it. Spoiler, Steve, for not.
You're fine.
They're setting up like at least 2 more seasons, possibly.
Okay.
If Mickey wants more, right?
Of course.
But
if it comes back, I will definitely watch a new season, because in my experience, a lot of shows, the first season is kind of the worst, and then it finds itself in the second season when supposedly all the producers and stuff are off their backs about it being just perfectly for one audience, something like that. So there's still hope, maybe. I hope.
This day and age of social media and just how fandom is just kind of always out there instantaneously to the creators of these shows or movies and saying what they do and don't like. I think a lot of that does take into consideration. I mean, I know with like a show like Star Trek Picard, with the first season, a lot of fans didn't like it. So they took into account of that and then try to make a second season that would appease those fans. But that didn't help. So then they're like, oh, don't worry, this 3rd season of Star Trek Picard is definitely going to make you guys happy, but it hasn't aired yet. So we'll see. And so maybe like with the Willow series, they'll be like, all right, yeah, we see what you're doing there. I think the biggest, I'm going to say complaint, but I think one of the sad things is like, one of the stars of the first movie Willow was Val Kilmer, and not having him in it. And I think that was kind of the complaint with like the original or the Star Wars sequel movies is, well, you have the first movie, you have Luke Skywalker, but he's not in it. So it's like that hero that you kind of grew up with, or not even just growing up with it, but like bring him into the series. Like Bad Morgan, but of course Val Kilmer's health,
Yeah.
It would have been really cool if they had a moment like Egon in Ghostbusters Afterlife, where he just shows up. He doesn't have any lines. He doesn't say anything, but he's kind of, we don't know if he's dead or not, but
yeah,
we just see him as an apparition or something helping.
Right.
I don't know. That would be, but then also it's already been done in Ghostbusters.
Which throwing off the tangent there, I think that Ghostbusters Afterlife did a great job of making that movie about Egon, even though Harold Ramis had passed, for almost 10 years at that point.
Yeah.
But, we're not talking about those reboots. We're here to talk about another, I guess it's not a reboot. It's a requel. Is that what they're going to be called now? Requels?
Requel. I like that.
There's TV shows that are, like I mentioned in the intro, that are reboots, like the Bel Air. That's a reboot of the Fresh Prince. It's not a continuation, but things like this new Night Court or the new Quantum Leap or the Mad About Jews. Got just another requel dropped on Netflix yesterday on the date of this recording. That's That 90s Show with the
that's
sequel
right
to That 70s Show. So we're going to talk about that instead.
Okay.
Wait, they're doing That 90s Show again?
This is a common misnomer because there was that 80s show, but there never was that 90s show. Yeah, that's what
it was.
I thought the same thing.
And I believe that 80s show wasn't actually, Was it actually in this? I don't think it was in the same universe. Or
if it was, they never like really crossed over. I think it just happened to be from the same writers.
Yeah,
trying to cash in on the popularity of that. But yeah,
I think it's kind of like again, talking about reboots and remakes and requels, the How I Met Your Father, which I think it's in the same universe, because I think we watched the first episode when it came out, and boy, was that awful. I could not handle that show. We were talking about, after watching these first 2 episodes of the Night Court requel, that we're like, what actual sitcom, 3-camera like laugh track type sitcom that's new do we even watch?
Yeah.
Steve, do you have any?
I don't think that I do, and we'll get into it. But that's one of the things that stands out about this, is that it is such a traditional sitcom in like the purest form. Like the sitcoms of the 70s and 80s, this is like following that standard very closely.
And I think like the sitcom in general format is geared towards our demographic.
Yeah.
So let's just get into it then. Night Court, original one from 84 to 92. I know we were all little kids at the time, Heather being the littlest. What were your memories as a kid about Night Court?
Yeah, I'll make this quick. 0. I didn't watch it at all. I was -2 to 6 when it was on, and we never watched it. I mean, maybe they did when I was little and don't remember, but it never was on TV. They never turned on any reruns. So 0, the end.
But now the reason you're on this podcast is because we have watched about half the series, the original series. So what were your thoughts so far on the original series, that what you've seen?
I think it's a lot of fun. We usually watch it late when we're getting ready for bed, because it's a kind of show where you don't have to think. You don't have to feel any like super harsh feelings. You just laugh and have a good time. And sometimes the episodes are really eye-rolly, and sometimes they're really good. And I enjoy the simplicity of the show.
Are any of the characters that stand out to you being a fave, or do you like or dislike some of the characters?
I mean, no, I think they're all great. Harry Anderson's great. I like John Larroquette. Bull is always fun, but no, I like the show overall, I think.
I think when we first started watching, you thought Harry Anderson was Dana Carvey.
Oh yeah, he's now looks like Harry Anderson to me, but at first because I haven't seen him in anything else that I knew of. Although, what did we just see him on? Harry the Hand. Oh, Cheers. He was on Cheers.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh hey.
Well, that's kind of how he kind of got the gig. He's pretty much like, oh, let's just kind of do his Harry the Hat character on Night Court. I'm sure we've watched the 80s TV movie of Stephen King's It. Harry Anderson's in that.
Who was he in that?
He's Richie as the adult kid, as all kids become adults.
Oh.
Yeah.
You mean you never watched the hit CBS sitcom Days World, based on the writings of Dave Barry?
Nope.
I don't think I think I probably tried watching that show, but I don't really remember much.
I specifically remember whenever it was on, probably like 94 or 95, like after this, I was excited to watch it because like, oh, Harry Anderson's funny, so that means that the show has to be funny.
Yeah.
Oh boy, it was not.
And Dave Barry, I mean, he's the best bathroom humorist, right?
Oh yeah.
As in the terms of like, you buy his Dave Barry books and you read them in the bathroom.
Yeah. And right now, if you go to any Goodwill in America, next to that Irma Bombeck book, there's going to be a Dave Barry book.
Heather, do you have any idea?
I recognize the poster. I was just looking at Dave's World. I think maybe I have seen it. Just that's so familiar for some reason.
And then Steve, how about you? What's your relationship?
Oh boy. So my earliest memory is staying up late as a child, like 5 or 6, watching Cheers with my dad or with both my parents, and then asking to stay up a little bit later and then watching Night Court and finding it really funny, but then remembering like my dad covering my eyes when like a sexy lady would show up in a bikini or whatever, probably because of Dan Fielding. But then also when it reached 100 episodes and started going into syndication, I remember either staying home from school sick and watching it, or after school it would be on like at 6 p.m. or whatever, and I'd watch it every day kind of religiously. And it kind of became one of my favorites. Like, it's funny because I know that Cheers has such place in sitcom history and TV history, and it holds a place in everyone's heart. And I completely agree. It's one of my favorite shows of all time, one of the best written shows of all time. But for me, Night Court felt a little different, a little more grimy, a little bit more dirty not like necessarily with content, but it was kind of, but it was also a little sillier. It was a bit more like a cartoon. I always appreciated that. And then I've also been kind of rewatching it over the past year, and it just holds a place. There are a lot of, like, as you put it, Heather, eye rolling moments, but I think that's kind of one of the charms is that it has such an old fashioned kind of goofiness and like old Hollywood comedy mentality that I kind of appreciate.
When talking about like the intro, Reinhold Wiggy, that he started writing and was producing on Barney Miller, and so you get a lot of that humor from Barney Miller kind of melts into the Night Court. And for those who haven't seen Barney Miller, I think as a sitcom in general, it's a classic funny sitcom, but a brilliant sitcom because it just takes place in the precinct. It's a play. I mean, they were literally showing you a stage play every week. Also had one of a diverse cast for that time period too, and I think Night Court was also trying to like diversify. Before recently, now people are like, oh, we were looking back and like, oh yeah, I guess everyone is white on TV now, or like back then. Like there are other people out there. So
yeah, it's funny like looking at the reboot, and if anybody's upset, it's just like, oh, you're mad that brown people exist. Like
we're also watching we're rewatching because she has never seen Buffy the Vampire Slayer before, so we're rewatching that, and all I could think is like, there sure are a lot of white people on this show.
Right.
But yeah, so like, I mean, I think with my Night Court memory too is it was on after Cheers. I don't think my parents liked it that much, so I would watch it. And then syndication, of course, I'd watch it, and I would just loved everybody on the show. And being a huge Star Trek fan, I just remember actually sitting down, I think, with my mother watching it, and when Brent Spiner's character, what was his name? Recurring.
Oh God, the
Bob.
Hillbilly.
The Wheelers. Yes, the Wheelers. And I remember we'd be watching it, and the Wheelers would come on, and my mom would be like, "That's the guy who plays Data," and I'm like, "What? People can do other things?" And like, when I'm a little kid, thinking like what actors did, like. I don't get it. I thought he was. I didn't think he was an actual android, but maybe I did. I was an idiot when I was a kid. I still am, but.
I'll admit I was far too old before I realized that was Brent Spiner.
Yeah, so like,
and by far too old, I mean like 40.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You just learned today. Today you learned. But yeah, so like, just he goes from being this like super smart robot on a TV show to being like a bumpkin, and I'm like, this is I kind of fell in love with I kind of fell in love with the whole performing, like acting, which is something I always inspired to do, but I never did. I don't have the talent for it. But yeah, so the reruns and everything. So you were saying Cheers, I've seen Cheers. I couldn't tell you how many times I've seen that show. Anytime an episode is on TV, I could tell you what episode it is. Night Court, not so much. I don't really remember how the series ends. I think I kind of do, but it's still just kind of a comfort show. And yeah, it started out, I think the show really kind of started off as a little bit more serious and not goofy. Whereas like when they start doing absurd things, well, I think wasn't the very first episode of Night Court, like they proved Santa Claus maybe was real.
Yeah, that was definitely if not the first episode, a very early episode.
But I just remember like Night Court would do just weird things. I loved all the perps that would come in. They were all the punchline, Harry sets up the joke and then you see the punchline. And a goofy show. I loved Bull. I think as a kid, I think Bull was such a fun character. Looking back now, watching John Larroquette as Dan Fielding is very problematic in the original series.
Sure.
Harry with all the magic tricks I thought was cool. I'm like, that's how you get girls. Learn magic tricks.
Yeah.
That's not how you get
I'm not
girls.
sure if the first episode is about Santa Claus. It's possible, but I was just reading the description and it says, while Harry and Christine try to sort out their feelings, Dan kidnaps her for part 1 and part 2. Is that what happened? I don't remember.
No, Christine didn't show up till season 3. Because I believe.
Oh, I'm on season 9. Oh, spoilers.
Oh no, you don't even.
Oh no.
Oops.
Well, technically there was an episode of Night Court after the
Santa Claus was the second episode.
Okay,
there you go.
Night Court. There was an episode of Night Court after the series wrapped and before this one, but we haven't got to that one yet. That's, of course, I'm referencing to a 30 Rock episode, so I won't spoil that for Heather because season 9 I think doesn't really the series ends, but I think they end it on a cliffhanger, or they just kind of wrap it up in a weird way?
I think it just ends kind of unsatisfactorily. Like you don't really have a good ending,
like many TV shows do, right?
Yeah, true.
All right, well, let's not try to spoil what happens to certain characters from the original series. Uh, I don't. We know that Harry Judge Stone dies sometime between 92 and 2022 or 23. So let's just get into the new Night Court. NBC was gracious enough to drop the first 2 episodes. We didn't have to wait a whole week to watch episode 2. That's interesting. Like, I know the streaming services like Netflix drops all the episodes. Disney sometimes will drop the first couple, but do networks do that? Like, here's the first 2.
Not really, but I think that there's like, especially traditional networks like Peacock or NBC, they're so eager to keep viewership now because there's so many options that they need to do too. And I feel like for this one, the second episode really felt like a continuation of the first one, so they kind of tie together really well.
Some shows would start with an hour-long special anyway.
That's true.
The whole idea of binging is people just want to sit down and watch the whole show in one sitting. So we got to at least give those people 2 so they don't immediately leave and never come back.
Yeah, I agree, because I think the first 2, it was nice having that drop, because then you kind of get a little bit more established in the characters to see if they grow on you. Yet there's, it's only 2 episodes, so you're not going to fall in love with all the characters instantaneously, because they need to give them room to grow and have stories for the other characters.
So yeah, we started off by like introducing Abby Stone and Donna Gerganis, or Gergs, and I like the little juxtaposition they do of like what Dan's doing as a barista, or actually a lawyer serving guy, process server, and Judge Stone going through the metal detector on her first day of work. And I think that it really sets off a nice start to the show, introducing Abby Stone. And, they even referenced, Harry Stone, her dad. And so I think that was a lot of fun. And yeah.
I really liked her outfit at the beginning. It's a callback to Christine when she was a judge for a day, how she wants to wear the robes but still look fashionable, so she's just got this big 80s blouse like bow coming out the front of her judge robes. So I enjoyed that part.
So I don't want to jump ahead of anything, but speaking of Christine and the fact that Abby's dressed like Christine, I don't know the history, but I know that towards the end of the show, I remember that Harry and Christine kind of had a romantic involvement. Do you think we're going to get the reveal that Christine is Abby's mom?
No, we're not.
Okay.
I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because Faith Ford will be playing the mother.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
I saw on the Night Court wiki that it said her mother is Gina, played by Murphy Brown alum Faith Ford. So
okay, that's asked and answered. Good to know.
So there we go. I'm glad that's not the case, because it's
a little too cute. It's a little too neat. That
was the one thing of the original Night Court that always kind of annoyed me, was with like the Christine and Harry. Like, I never would buy them as a couple.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't like that aspect, because you always had to have that aspect of will they or won't they.
Of course.
So for but speaking of this new series, do you think Dan Fielding and Abby Stone are going to hook up?
Maybe.
Going back to that beginning, that very first teaser, I thought it was great because of the juxtaposition between the dialogue, very sitcom-y, like the dialogue of you're talking to one thing and the sentence continues on to the other scene of Dan in the coffee shop.
Mm-hmm.
And, like when they're about to swear, they go back to the other thing. So you can't hear the swear. It's a very fun sitcom-y trope thing to do. And
absolutely.
And I just want to know how much it was to get for Dan Larroquette to borrow David Letterman's beard in that scene. His long fake beard was too distracting for me.
Yeah, it's like the end of Forrest Gump.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Jumping ahead, like speaking of Dan, like when she goes to see him at his apartment, and I'm looking at the set, I'm like, I hope that this is like, because anytime in the original Night Court they went to someone's apartment, it was the same apartment, but they redressed it.
Yeah, totally.
And that's a common thing you do on TV shows, is because you have so little, you have one soundstage and so little few sets, but just like it was always, the same apartment. Just like, oh, if it's going to be Christine's apartment, it's going to be pink,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they did so well with the sets. I forgot to mention that the night that this came out and we were watching it for the first time, I had just gotten back from my car being totaled in a hit and run.
Oof.
And so I was a little bit spacey. So when the episode first came on, I totally forgot we turned on the new episode and I thought it was old Night Court because the sets were the same. The music, the beats and everything were pretty close.
That's a great, in a weird way, and I'm sorry about your car, but that's like kind of the best compliment you can give the show.
And I was laughing the whole time.
Yeah.
I should have been a pile of mope, but I was just enjoying myself so much.
Well, it's like you were saying, Heather, that like it's a show where you can kind of turn off all the your thoughts or your feelings, or not feelings, but you need to zone out. And that's what sitcoms do, right? They help you relax, they help you laugh,
escape from reality.
Exactly. Show other people's problems so you don't have to deal with your own.
One thing about Dan's apartment, going back to that, this might be just me, but when she goes into the apartment and it's supposed to be like a pigsty, because he doesn't entertain that much, I did not get that.
Oh, yeah.
No, it should have been much, much worse.
Like, you had like a blanket on the couch and then the bag full of duck sauce, and that was about it.
I'm seeing there's a jar of popcorn there. It looks like he has a coffee cup on top of a speaker, like a styrofoam cup. And then, it's right by his Eames chair that, of course, it's the only Eames chairs that the studio has that they put in everyone's apartment. Like, I think that was Frasier's. I should, that's the one takeaway. I want that Eames chair, Steve.
It's a good chair.
Give me an Eames chair and get one for Heather. I'm not sharing.
I'll do that if you can get me the green couch that's in Abby's office, because I've always wanted that since the 80s.
Speaking of which,
that was the same couch.
I was just going to say, is that the same couch?
It might be the same couch.
I hope not, because there were so many shenanigans on that couch throughout the 9 years. How much of Dan's humanly juices were on that couch?
They are just actors.
Wait, I thought this was real.
So let's a documentary.
Yeah, you're talking about like the sets, like even the court, like even as a kid, my God, everything looks so dirty, and like it still kind of looks dirty, but in HD.
Yeah, it's interesting.
We met Abby, we met Dan. Hey, that guy in the beginning when they're going through the metal detector, is that like he's just like works there, right? Like the guy with all the tattoos and piercings. He had the Prince Albert. Is that what they're implying? Yeah, because
that's what I got out of it. Yeah,
like I was hoping that there was a beat like this guy who looks all like biker type rough guy, like if the punchline could have been that he's something that's not
like he runs the courtroom's daycare center or something.
Oh yeah. Who is he? Like he's a judge, blah blah, on the 14th floor, something like that. He's like just another judge.
Yeah.
Or yeah. Oh, is there a kids court? Is that a thing? A kid judge? I don't know. Baby court. It sounds like something they would write on The Simpsons.
Yeah.
And then also in the coffee shop, there's a couple faces or people from the improv comedy world. Who's Steve? You know the guy that Dan serves?
Yes, that is Will Hines, who is an amazing improviser. He wrote a book, How to Be the Greatest Improviser of All Time, which is like, for me, one of the best books on the art of improv that I've ever read. And he's been a frequent guest on the podcast Comedy Bang Bang. Just an all-around funny guy. And it was great to see him on screen doing what he does best, which is not act very hard, but just doing what he does. It's he always makes me laugh.
But playing a straight character, that's...
Yeah.
What about the reveal of Dan? Like, you think, oh, he's working in a coffee shop, but he's just a process server. But I kind of am annoyed by those jokes, like those coffee jokes. And I assume you are too.
You're right. That the oat milk latte for Tad, the non-drink for non-name, that's kind of dumb. And even like the joke about the tea, I've got the recipe for you. Yeah. But him telling the lady how to open up a milk container as a barista, that's kind of funny.
I actually did like the tea joke. Like,
it is, yeah.
To make this at home. Yeah. All right. Well, we got the intro out of the way, right? We got an actual kind of truncated intro TV theme song again. Like it's the same theme, but it kind of just sounds like a 90s parody song of Night Lord. Like it's that guitar. Like, I don't know. Just put the original song back in.
But at least we got one at all. At least there
true.
is a theme song, which is required for a good old-timey sitcom. Because now when you get a theme song, it's only if it's a big like HBO show like Game of Thrones or...
Right, and then it's like 7 minutes long and you have to like,
Is that why Prestige TV or HBO or these streamer services, why they're so popular, is because they still have intro theme songs?
Could be.
You're watching Wednesday and it's got a minute 30 intro. Game of Thrones, like that's my favorite part of Game of Thrones is the song in the beginning of the credits.
Peacemaker was one of my favorites because whether the show was good or not, which I thought it was, I always looked forward to the dance scene when they're doing the intro. So
no, Peacemaker is good. It's loved. But I know because of like network TV, they don't do that because of ad space and ad time. The more you play a theme, that's less advertising money because they need more. They need more ad space, and then you still have to tell
people like to latch on to something that's familiar. So if you hear the same song that plays over and over, that's something that would happen to me. And whenever we would turn on like Firefly and the theme started playing, I would just get this pulse of joy. I'm like, oh boy, my favorite show's coming on. And so any show that doesn't have a theme song or an intro, they're missing that connection, I think, to their viewers.
Yeah. And think about West Wing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even talking about sitcoms like Big Bang Theory, starring Melissa Rauch as well, like that had the theme.
Yeah.
I guess there's still some, but like that's been off for a couple of years. But again, what's the hits? Oh, well, see, I think it is because like the 3-camera sitcom with the laugh track isn't as popular as it is. So it's interesting that this is coming back, because we were thinking about what new show we do watch, and we do watch CBS's like #1 sitcom, which is Ghosts, but it's a 1-camera, no laugh track, and that's the popularity of sitcoms these days.
Yeah, I think if it's not a Chuck Lorre produced sitcom, it's going to be a single cam type of thing. Yeah,
this felt like just your traditional sitcom that we kind of grew up with.
Yeah, it just kind of flows, and it's not trying to reinvent the wheel, and I appreciate that.
And the humor wasn't too like sped up in your face like some things. Like when we try to watch the new MST3Ks, we felt like the humor was a little rushed, probably because kids these days don't have an attention span. I appreciated that they didn't do that in this show. It definitely seems like the show is not just focusing on, let's say, the same demographic as Willow. I think that's why they have those dumb coffee jokes, is because the older people are still going to laugh at those.
You could say
those sorts of dad jokes.
Stephen Craig's age.
Yeah.
I'm thinking more your dad's age, but still.
Oh, I don't think this show's for boomers.
Did they not watch it at all?
I told you,
Maybe
no,
not
they
boomers.
didn't. They didn't really watch the Night Court. My mom might. My dad, no.
Yeah, my parents didn't either. So
no. So it was meant for us. Because I think what Steve said, like the original series felt very cartoony. So, we go to like before Dan appears, but they have a whole joke with a seer or a psychic. They do the whole bit of like, she talks in her normal voice, but then Abby's all like, "Yeah, do the voice for us," doing the typical
like Romany.
Yeah. Which felt very much like the original series, like goofiness.
Right, like those archetypes. In the first few episodes, there's like 2 or 3 different people who were charged with indecent exposure. And that's really kind of something that Night Court always covered. And I think that, in the age that we're in, we're a bit more enlightened, a bit more open-minded. There's kind of a challenge that the writers probably have to do these things, because there might be in the 80s cases about transvestites or something like that. And you wouldn't do that nowadays. Rightfully so, obviously. So I think that they are creating new cases that are a bit more modern and effective.
They probably did an episode, a gay scare episode, right? Or they did a lot of...
probably.
Well, there was one, Heather was watching a Cheers, she was telling me about it, and I remember this episode too, but maybe the first or second season, where like all the guys in the bar...
Oh yeah, they were worried it was going to turn into a gay bar, and yeah, every single character was just being a dick about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, they go...
Yeah, I missed the ending, so I left when they were just all being jerks about it. I don't know. I assume it had a nice happy ending and they're all friends, but
yeah,
as far as I know, the next episode it wasn't a gay bar, so it probably didn't turn out well for those guys.
But they did have a happy ending.
Yes. I'm sure like Diane and Sam, or Diane spoke to Sam and then Sam understood and Sam told the guys. But again, not a Cheers. We'll talk about Cheers during the Cheers reboot, and probably it's going to happen in a year or so.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying it eventually is going to happen.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a thing.
And then Heather, it will be a gay bar. We're a Simpsons podcast, and they do a Simpsons joke. Remember that someone changes all the names on the board to funny names, like Bartwood. When he calls Mo up.
Would you like a list of them?
Yes, let's hear it.
Yes.
Okay, we've got Warren Pease, Leek Dripley, Bjorn Free, Frank Einstein, Chi Spurger, D. Saster, Fran Tick, Frida Convict, Gary Buttmouth.
That's the one, yeah.
Hugh Janus, Chris P. Bacon, Gil T. Ezel, Hopeless Case, Winnie Bago, Ivana Dayoff, Tristan Shout, You'll Be All Right, Raphael Idaho, which one I don't get, Anima, and Emma Anopia, and Kay Oz.
Is Emma Anopia supposed to be like onomatopoeia?
Maybe that's what it is, yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Sounds like
that's fun.
We learned at the end of the episode that was done by Neil, the court's clerk, who's kind of taking the Mac role. And I think that, he's kind of a go-getter who doesn't want to go get in his current position. And I think that's an interesting change of pace.
So he's going to be would you say like the not millennial? What's the one after or before or after millennial?
The gens.
Like the lazy Gen Z or something like that. Is that the character he
Yeah.
is? Like
Kind of, yeah.
no ambitions, right?
Right.
Like all you Gen Zers out there,
That's right.
and like all us millennials,
That's also right.
and you Gen Xers. Not a political podcast, but you really let the boomers fuck over this country.
Yeah. Way to go, Gen X, which I might be a part of.
But yeah, so the whole point of the pilot episode is to get Dan to come back, and she uses some tactics. Like Harry was your friend. There's kind of like a sad beat. Like we kind of learned that Dan had a wife, Sarah. Now we don't know if they divorced or she's dead. I'm leaning on the dead side.
I think the way that he responded was she was, and that kind of like sad smile they gave.
Yeah.
To me implied that she was dead, but I also think that's kind of a brilliant piece of writing because it kind of helps reset Dan Fielding as a character, because we know him, aside from being a lawyer and all that, he's also kind of a horny lech. And I think by having him have a wife and lost one, he's kind of doesn't have to be so horny anymore.
Which I think is a great thing to do for this modern era, because you can't really have those characters on TV anymore.
Precisely, yeah.
Since Night Court did some wacky stuff, with just telling a story of, I feel like they could probably in future episodes have a scene where Dan like has a vision of his ex-wife, played by probably a stunt casting from a favorite famous actress or whatever, where he's talking to the ghost of his wife. He's having a mental breakdown of some sort, because they would do serious things.
Yeah.
On the show. So I can see something like that happening. We learn his
I wonder
past.
if this character's gonna have any like kids come out of the woodwork.
Ooh,
we
that's
can
very
assume
possible.
that he's probably been with a lot of women. Could very easily have some kind of illegitimate child come up at some point. Because his character now, is less of a horny lech and more of like a father protective figure, which is kind of maybe why he wants to go and help out Abby as a friend of her father's. I'm getting more of that vibe from him so far.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, you're definitely gonna have the father-daughter relationship. He's the Giles and she's the Buffy. Again, we've been watching too much Buffy.
Yes.
So in this first episode, he does just finally come and help her out with the court case, and it ends with a flasher, like Steve said. So we didn't get much character growth from obviously the first two, or the new characters. Like you said, Neil as Abby's clerk, we see he's kind of like not a prankster, but just does whatever he wants, right? I think Lucretta playing Gergs, we're getting kind of I think there's a lot with that character, and I think in the second episode we kind of learn a bit more, or get to know about her like mannerisms.
I say that? Yeah. I think what she does well is that, when I think of the bailiffs, like the two that I go to are obviously Bull and Roz. Bull being the goofy, silly one who has weird ideas, and Roz being the tough, straight person. And I think that she does kind of a good job kind of towing the line between both roles, because she is silly and goofy, but she also has strength and is kind of a grounded character in a way. And so I think that she does a really good job of fulfilling that.
Yeah, she seems like a people pleaser as well, but also like super friendly and helpful.
Yeah,
as a character.
Maybe Bull and Roz had a child. Because she's a perfect mix of them. To me, that's exactly what I was thinking too.
That's funny. Yeah. And then one more character is India D. Beaufort as Olivia. I guess she'd be this show's version of Dan Fielding as the DA, kind of the let's just throw everyone in jail and go out and I think her character really has the 2 episodes. I don't think her character really has, we haven't really seen her character, what we can like or dislike about her yet. So I don't think.
Can I say though, maybe this is just me and maybe I'm being too harsh, but I feel like her performance is a bit, I know this is a very broad sitcom, obviously, but it feels a little broad, a little like Disney or Nickelodeon show.
Interesting.
Maybe it's just me, but like she just like seemed to like ham it up a little bit too much for me, and it might form out, like it's still very early on, and I think as the original Night Court shows, like things will change and things will evolve, but I don't know, she just, especially in the pilot, she just seemed to be a little hokey for me.
I can't really form an opinion yet, just because I don't think her character, I haven't seen much of her character. So
totally.
But is this gonna be like the original Night Court, where we meet these casts, but then by season 2, if it gets picked up, it'll be a whole new cast, and it'll just be Melissa and John Larroquette?
I mean, in the 2 episodes, we've gone through 3 stenographers, so
yeah.
But the stenographer really wasn't, a main character. It wasn't until like the last couple seasons where they kind of had a reoccurring stenographer. I forget her
Right.
name, but yeah.
Her last name is Lutz in real life.
Oh, that's
I don't know
fun.
why that's important, but
Well, let's talk about like Melissa Rauch's character too. Like, I think they've established her pretty well that she is kind of a dork like her father, or
Mhm.
very much like a dork like her father. Trying to make everyone happy. The second episode. We'll start with the second episode. Like, she gives everyone out these water bottles. It's just kind of fun because like after that, we watch an episode where Harry is making everyone go bowling. He's got everyone bowling shirts and stuff like that. So it's like, you get it there.
Yeah. She's kind of trying to prove herself. She's maybe a little too young, maybe a little bit too female to be a judge.
getting strong
So-
like Leslie Knope vibes.
Oh yeah,
Parks
definitely.
and Rec, yeah.
I'm just excited to see a fellow squeaky voiced female in such a position of power and in such a great role.
Yeah.
The opening, again, just a funny joke with bald people and I swear, Steve, you were in that
Yeah,
courtroom, too, right?
The one in the sweater.
Yeah, with the glasses.
Of course.
Except you don't have facial hair, so.
That's true.
And I thought the bit with the keys, with Gergs dropping the keys, I thought that was good. That's a good stinger.
Yeah.
We can talk about callbacks too. There's the armadillo, Harry's armadillo that's in the office. She doesn't
Yep,
have
you called that. That was the first thing that came out of the box. You knew it was going to be.
And then back in the first episode, she has a pool ball, billiards ball to kind of like remember when you and my dad were playing pool. And I don't remember
We
that
said
episode.
it was when Harry Stone. He said he didn't want to be a judge or something. Have we watched that episode yet?
I know there's.
I definitely remember that episode
What season
because
is that from?
I want to say season 3 or 4.
Oh, so you probably did then.
Because I remember seeing it not too long ago. Because he does like get fed up because he just kind of gets disheartened by like everybody's cynicism and everybody's like not trying, and so he just wants to quit and become a professional pool player. And it's Dan who, well, obviously,
Okay, yeah.
Dan who saves the day and convinces him to not give up.
Right, and I keep trying to think, have I seen that episode? But the image that keeps coming to my head is the Cheers episode where he's Harry the Hat and he's playing pool. So wires are crossed, I think.
I thought that there's a joke where, talking about the dirtiness of the show, that there's like a stain on the wall. They want someone to paint over it, and they're going to paint the justices. And at first, but it's kind of funny. It's like they can't draw hands, so he puts baseball mitts on. And I'm like, that sounds like kind of like a goofy joke. And I thought, because of like, I'm very schlocky in my thoughts and sentimental type of schlockiness. And I thought, because they're putting justices there, and I thought, maybe there's going to be a tribute to Marky Post, and like, what if like one of the justices is Marky Post's character, Christine Sullivan? Like, what if that was like a final thing? Is like, I was like, what if they do some cheesy shit like that? And they didn't. I thought they pulled that off with a joke that he painted the Golden Girls.
That reveal was so great.
That was better than I thought. Like I could have.
Especially the joke about the Getty Museum.
It's Estelle Getty, yeah.
Yeah, in Florida. Also,
Yeah.
that character, kind of like what was it, Art in the original?
Yeah. And
this one is nice because he's different because, one, he's competent but probably crazy. And I love that in the first episode,
like
when Dan is like, he's asking for his advice, and he's like, in my country, we have a story, or we have a saying, when you're holding a dead bird, tell a shorter story. It's funny to me.
I know. I almost thought it would have been a fun reveal if like that was actually Art, like was still there, because Dan was just like, nothing's really changed, right, Art? I think the actor's still alive.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, most of the actors are dead from the show, the original show. Yeah, speaking of which, I didn't bring up in the intro that Reinhold Wiggy, who created the show, he passed away in 2012, so he has nothing to do with this show.
Oh, wow.
Because he's dead. Dan Rubin is the guy who's the showrunner for this, and he was a producer for like Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. He worked on a Happy Endings TV series and the Michael J. Fox show. He's got some stuff under his belt there.
Yeah, that's a good lineage, and I think that he does a really good job of capturing the tone of the original show.
Yeah. What else in the second episode that the main plot of it was just another, like you said, continuation of kind of bringing Dan into this world, and Abby wanting him to be a like softer judge, right? And he's got the little sweater on. Just kind of reminds me like, well, I might not be a big fancy lawyer, just like one of those like Southern like.
Right. I do like that one case that he had about the guy who, as they put it, urinated on a Starbucks. Not in, but on. And then Dan's argument about how his dad may have died in a coffee field because of Starbucks being evil, and that affects millions of people, and possibly him as well. I thought that was a fun joke. And then Abby figuring out that because in the paperwork the guy transposed some vowels that he's dyslexic, so he couldn't figure out the code, so he just peed on the floor. That's just some creative writing right there. I think it's good.
Was there anything that really grossed you out in the second episode?
Oh, you mean the paper eating?
Yeah.
From the lizard man?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty gross. I didn't like that.
If you haven't listened to our other hit podcast, the 103 Simpsons podcast, Steve has a quirk, I guess, would you call it? Like people eating paper really upsets him for some reason.
It's nauseating to me, and it makes me want to vomit.
So just imagine if you're like in middle school and you tell your friends that, they're just going to start eating paper right in front of your face all the time.
Yeah, because they're respectful if you're...
Phobias or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And surely they would not do that in their like later 20s, 30s.
Right. Maybe transfer to
not.
toilet paper, which is far worse.
Oh, no.
Yeah, use toilet paper.
Yuck.
We also have Olivia and her interactions with the bailiff, who, I don't know if you guys watched the reboot sitcom on Hulu, but she was a
reboot. Okay.
Yeah, I know that was confusing. She was this is also confusing. She was a writer on the show. Like she didn't write for the show, but on the show she played a writer. That's a very confusing sentence. But she was good, and I'm sad to see her go if she is actually gone, because they kind of got rid of her. But I thought she was great
On the show Reboot.
Yeah, and in this.
Spoilers. I think we watched the first couple episodes. I was fine with it. I just forgot to hit play.
Yeah, it
again.
happens.
Yeah. Huh.
We have Dan working on his case with the lizard man who eats paper, and kind of diving deeper into him. And then he ends up paying Gergs $50 to find out more. And then she writes it out on those Post-it notes, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, and the lizard man handcuffs himself to like a water pipe. And I still feel like, how many times on the original series did someone just like handcuff themselves to something tonight? Or you were saying bailiff, the stenographer that
oh yeah, that's
Olivia. Yeah. So I was like, when is Olivia talking about they were supposed to go to medieval times? Is there medieval times in Manhattan?
It's got to be outside of the state. Like,
we get those horses.
It's gonna be quite the ride.
Yeah. Well, now I have to find out.
And there's a lot more medieval times locations than you'd think. I thought there was maybe 2.
I mean, there should be some here in Oregon and Washington, but there isn't, because we have horses. Oh, here it is. There's one in New Jersey in Lyndhurst.
There you go.
But still, that's probably a drive.
Yeah.
Can we also mention that according to Wikipedia, that the composer of the Night Court is Benjamin Sword Larroquette?
Oh yeah, that's his son.
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't know his middle name was Sword.
I think that's his stage name.
Ah.
It's really Benjamin Rapier Larroquette.
I can see why he changed it.
Ooh.
The bird storm, which I thought was a fun bit of physical comedy, where the maintenance guy, grabs on the light, then falls, and all the birds come flying out, which is like a good homage to the classic like physical comedy of the original show.
Mm.
And then at the end we have the kind of emotional tie-up where Dan connects with the lizard man, and then he goes into Abby's office and he's like, I met these other people, like this guy who's cutting people's hair without their permission, because he wants to make a wig for his daughter who has cancer, which I thought was sweet. And then this other woman, this is probably one of my favorite jokes in the first 2 episodes, who carries a non-functional gun because it reminds her of her father, Colt, who died when he's 45.
Yeah. I remember that bit. That was good.
It's such a dumb joke that I would want to write. I don't know why. It tickled me.
But yeah, it ends with some credits, I think. And that's the show. Yeah.
Steve, you mentioned earlier that you liked the show when you were younger because it was a bit cartoony, and I didn't realize until you said that it definitely is. It's with the physical humor and the jokes and the eye-rolly jokes. It's a little bit vaudeville.
Yeah, that's a good word for it.
Cool. Yeah.
The fact that they're able to continue that vaudevillian nature even in 2023, I think that's credit to them and the writers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's just kind of get with our final thoughts here with the whole first 2 episodes. Would you go back and watch it?
Yeah, I would definitely. I'm looking forward to all the rest of the episodes. I hope they also get 9 seasons. Well, I guess we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I think Melissa Rauch is doing great. It's great to see John Larroquette back. He looks perfectly normal as soon as he shaved that ridiculous beard off.
You mean when
I think
they took it off of him?
Yeah, sure. Lakrita is one of my favorite characters so far. I think she's definitely amping up the characterness and the comedy of it. So she's pretty fun. Can't wait to see what Olivia and Neil do, because so far they're not super memorable to me, but they'll have their chance, I'm sure. Yeah, my overall thoughts are just, it had the whole same feel. Like I said, when you first turned it on, I thought we were watching an old episode for a second. So yeah, all the beats are great. The comedy's great. I like an eye roll here and there. That's part of the fun. So looking forward to more. I think they're doing a great job so far.
Yeah, I think you're right. Lakrita, who plays Gergs the bailiff. Looking up more about her, she's also like a Broadway performer and singer. So
wow.
I'm hoping that the writers will utilize that. So I hopefully there'll be an episode where she gets to belt out.
I would love a
tunes.
musical episode.
I don't know if they'll do a musical, but that would be funny.
Yes.
But so she's an all around talented performer. So it'll be interesting to explore that character more.
I'm also really hoping that Brent Spiner comes back. I want some Wheelers.
Well, that's
Yeah.
I'm kind of hoping for, again, callbacks and references, and I think
And John Aston, he's still working.
That's
yeah.
right. John Aston, who played Harry's dad, Buddy, in the original series, he's still around. I'm not sure if he still performs or works. He's in his 90s, so
His recent credits are just podcasts, so maybe he'll just call in. We'll do a phone call or something.
yeah. It'd be great to have him come back. And then, of course, we're talking about Marsha Warfield as Roz, and hopefully see, maybe her character. Yeah, obviously, it'd be weird if like her character Roz is still a bailiff in her like 70s. That doesn't make sense. Of course not. And Richard Mole, who played, he's in his 80s. So I don't know if he would still be working. I don't know how they're going to bring his character back, Bull, for those who remember the last episode, but I won't spoiler anything.
Yeah, it seems that from what I've studied, that Bull or Richard Mole declined when they didn't even ask Marsha Warfield. So
yeah.
Oh,
And
bummer.
I heard that Richard didn't really like Larroquette. Is that true?
I've heard that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's weird.
But I know Marsha Warfield posted on social media. She gave nothing but best wishes after the series premiere and gave her love to John Larroquette. Maybe there's not bad blood. I don't think there's bad blood between them. But I think, the series Night Court in general was the John Larroquette show at the time. So
yeah,
he was the reason people were tuning in. And so you got to get that nostalgia for craze. And, I think without John Larroquette, I think Night Court reboot or remake would not succeed. Like if they did it with a whole new cast and didn't even, have reference to the original series, this show could not work. It has to be a spin-off or a requel, as we call it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it and the cartooniness of it. I'm here for it. Like, let's bring in aliens and vampires and like the weirdest things ever. Sure. She mentioned that she has Abby Stone has a fiance.
Oh yeah.
Upstate in Canada or something. Vancouver, maybe. That's not a real city. So I'm sure we're going to meet him, and I'm sure they're not going to get married.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's the sitcom, And of course, she'll end up meeting someone else throughout the series. I don't know. She looks age appropriate for Neil, but again, I didn't like in the original series with Harry and Christine, so I don't want hookups, but it's going to happen. It's a sitcom.
Yeah.
Maybe she'll get, the guest stars thing is always fun too. If they do stunt casting with like funny comedians or actors, coming in as perps would be great. Hey, maybe she'll get one of her Big Bang Theory co-stars on for ratings, right? Ratings boost. Like Johnny Galecki is a serial murderer. And then this week's Night Court, who cares, right?
Yeah.
Totally, yeah.
But yeah, I enjoyed it. I'll be watching it. I need a sitcom that I don't have to think too much about. And this is perfectly cromulent.
This checked all the boxes for me. It encapsulated the spirit of Night Court perfectly in my mind for the modern age. What I loved about it most is that it didn't try to wink at the audience too hard. It wasn't trying to like go behind the scenes and be like, hey, we're a reboot. It acknowledged it and it kept on going. It was a lot of fun. The jokes were silly. It is exactly the kind of junk food TV that a sitcom should be, with like that little bit of heart at the end, but mostly just goofiness. I think the cast is really great, and I'm excited to see where it goes, because I'm guessing there might be some changes in the coming weeks, and I'm fine with that. I think that it's really good, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more of it. Melissa Rauch is doing a great job as a judge. Her Endless Optimism is great, especially, I don't know, this might sound dumb, but I feel like as a world, we're all so cynical. So her sunniness is really nice. And I don't know, it's just, it warmed my heart. And I've watched both episodes multiple times now, and I get something new out of it every time. I'm a fan.
All right. Sounds like we're very hopeful, just like we were for Willow. But hey, they didn't put in any cover songs of famous rock songs from the 70s and 80s, right?
Yet.
True.
Oh no! Don't listen to this podcast, Dan Rubin. All right, I think we said it all. And hey, thanks for doing the episode, guys. Eye Off Springfield. We got two in 2 to 3 months here, right?
That's great.
What are we back for the next reboot or remake?
Well, now I'm really curious about that 90s show.
Also,
am I?
I never really watched that 70s show, so I have no nostalgia or interest. But I mean, I'd put it on.
I mean, half the reason I've been enjoying Buffy is because it's got all the 90s stuff I used to enjoy. So I'm from then.
How about you, Steve?
I'm trying to think of what shows are coming out that are reboots that I want to see.
Like that 90s show. Have you? Interest?
I used to watch that 70s show as kind of just a way to avoid doing homework in high school. And it was fine. I kind of found the characters to be all kind of unlikable. And I might check it out. I don't know that I need it.
I know the original cast is coming back, and the episodes I did watch. I think the only character I'm kind of interested in seeing is what the character of Hyde, what he's up to.
Uh-oh.
Too soon?
Probably.
You know what's really? I'm of course talking about Danny Masterson, who's a serial rapist. You know what sucks is I remember when I was in my early 20s, people said I'd look like him. So I don't like that. But you know, I'm not in my early 20s anymore, and I'm fat now, so we're good.
But you're not a rapist.
I'm not. We got that going for me. Jesus. All right.
I found a list of some reboots coming up.
Okay.
They're doing a reboot of True Blood. So
interesting.
That didn't end that long ago. That's kind of weird. Chronicles of Narnia. Wonka.
Well, that's a movie.
Inspector Gadget.
Oh.
Gossip Girl. I never watched that.
Inspector Gadget.
Knight
I hardly
Rider.
know her. Oh, sorry. How many times have they rebooted Knight Rider?
A lot. I think in the 90s and the 2000s, I think.
Yep. Yeah, that's
probably the 2010s.
Yep. More Pirates of the Caribbean, because why not? Although after the whole Johnny Depp, well, I don't know. Aren't they trying to bring him back anyway? Oh, and then Home Alone, which we saw and it was terrible. The end.
Well, like TV show wise, I think we talked about History of the World Part 2 is like a 4-episode event. That'll be on Hulu. So we might watch that. I don't know if we'll do a podcast, but yeah. Well, I'm sure there's something rebooting any day now. We'll be back for Frasier in a couple years, I think. So
there we go.
Or in a year. All right. Well, hey, thanks for coming on talking Night Courts. You guys all get a $50 fine with time served.
Thank you.
Except for you, Steve. You get 500 hours of community service.
No.
Naked.
Oh.
I don't think that was ever a sentence on the show. All right. Well, again, thanks for listening, everybody. Hey, if you want to contact us, it's simple. You go to our Instagram or Facebook or Twitter at 13simpsons.
And you can always email us at 13simpsons@gmail.com. And hey, if you're so kind, go to your favorite podcasting app. Leave us 5 stars or the equivalent. But you don't need to write a real review. Just write the case that you're in for and why you deserve to be charged for $50 in time served.
And that's going to do it for this week. I've been Craig.
And I've been Steve.
And I've been Heather. Thanks for having me, guys.
Of course.
And podcast dismissed.